Stop me if you've heard this one, and if you happen to be a longtime listener of this podcast, you have definitely heard this one before, but what a difference a week can make. The last time that I spoke to you, the Edmonton Oilers were riding high in the standings. They were on a 3-game winning streak, pretty modest little streak. And now a week later, man, absolutely everything feels like it's changed with this team. Very few players outside of McDavid and Draisaitl are scoring. McDavid and Draisaitl are just not scoring enough goals to win games. And now the team is on a 4-game winning streak, which the way that this team started this season, I would have to think that probably a lot of fans thought was something that could never happen. And so, as a lot of fans are wont to do when the team seems to hit a bit of a downturn, the question needs to be asked, what is it that the team needs to do to get this thing turned around? And an answer that a lot of fans frequently come forward with at times like this is that, they need to make a trade. They need to go out and get a new player. And as it just so happens, there is a player that seems to have become available over the last couple of weeks. And really the biggest question afoot is whether or not the Edmonton Oilers or any team in the league would actually want that player. So, of course, the player that I'm speaking about is Evander Kane. Everybody had to see that coming for a mile at this particular point. And it seems like there is a lot of agreement on this, and that is that Oilers fans, they don't have any interest in Evander Kane. And it isn't as if Evander Kane has given anybody a shortage of reasons to not want their team to go out and acquire him. I think that a lot of the talk about Evander Kane, about all of the problems that he has, I do think that some of it's pretty exaggerated. I think that he gets a rougher ride for having some of the problems that he's had as an NHL player. But there is one thing that we really cannot deny, and that is that Evander Kane has had his share of problems. Every time that he's been traded out of a team, whether it was Winnipeg, whether it was Buffalo, every time that he's been traded, you can trace that trade back to some very troubling behaviors that Evander Kane has had as a hockey player. Not just his myriad list of personal problems, but a lot of really unprofessional behavior from Evander Kane as well. And so I don't deny any of that. Frankly, it would be crazy to deny any of that. It's just too well known. But I do feel like one question should be asked of Oilers fans, and that is, would Evander Kane merit an opportunity with the Oilers as a reclamation project? If the Oilers were to do something like that, it wouldn't be the first time that they've ever done it. It certainly wouldn't be the first time that they've done it in recent history. One of the most popular players on the team right now, Zack Kassian, did come to the Oilers as a reclamation project. He was a guy who had been in and out of the league, had substance abuse issues, all sorts of personal problems, and when he came to the Oilers, he just happened to be coming to a team that already had Sam Gagner in the lineup. And so Sam Gagner famously had been the person who had been victimized by that Zack Kassian high stick that wound up breaking his jaw. And when he came back after that injury, and he was still wearing his face shield, Zack Kassian, who had inflicted that injury, had the temerity at that time to approach Sam Gagner and make fun of him for wearing the full face mask. And so when Edmonton Oilers general manager Peter Chiarelli of the time went out and acquired Kassian, I think there was a lot of good reason for a lot of fans to look at it and say, to look at this situation and say, you know what? This isn't going to work. Like, this is something that cannot happen. We need to abort this now. But then something very different happened, and that was that Zack Kassian came into the organization. He was taken under the wing of various people within the organization. They helped him work through his problems. And now Zack Kassian is a very serviceable NHL player. I mean, while he struggled from time to time over these past few seasons, as a matter of fact, he seems to be struggling a little bit right now. He has been a very valuable addition to this team, and if they had looked at all of the different problems that he had before they acquired him, not only might it never have happened for Edmonton, but it might have never happened for any other NHL team. And so Zach Kassian is really only the most recent example of an Edmonton Oilers reclamation project that worked out really well. There is actually a very much better example when you look a little bit further into the past, and of course that was Craig MacTavish. Of all the problems that you could say about Evander Kane, all of the problems that he has, and yes, he does have them. That's it just would not be reasonable to deny them. He does have those problems, but if you look at the problems that Evander Kane has right now, and you compare them to the problems that Craig MacTavish had when the Edmonton Oilers brought him in, we're not even talking about the same universe. I mean, Craig MacTavish, for as great a player as he was, for as great a person as I think that he became, at the time that the Edmonton Oilers brought him in, he had literally killed somebody in a drunk driving accident. And if the Edmonton Oilers could look past something like that and make a player of the caliber of Craig MacTavish out of that kind of a situation, I do think it's a reasonable question. I think it's reasonable to take a look at the Evander Kane situation and ask yourselves, with the right support, with the right coaching, with the right help, what kind of player could a player with Evander Kane's talents become? If somebody just has it in themselves to step up and take that chance with him. Now, would I suggest that Evander Kane should be plucked out of the San Jose Barracuda in the AHL, where he happens to be right now, and transplanted directly into the Edmonton Oilers lineup? No, definitely not. I think that Evander Kane would have to go down to Bakersfield, be very carefully coached, be very carefully managed, make sure that he's not, poisoning any of the development of the younger players there with his influence. And after a few weeks of that, if he makes measurable progress in Bakersfield, I mean, not just in terms of his on-ice play, but also his off-ice activities, well, then maybe that becomes a situation where you might think about bringing him up to the main club. Although, I would note that, I mean, he has kind of presented this illusion of turning a new leaf before. As a matter of fact, when he joined San Jose, he kind of came out of the blocks, and he looked like he was going to be an absolute superstar. And all this time later, we see what that's amounted to. The same kind of problems, the same behavior, the same problem behaviors, just reemerge over and over again. So no, you probably wouldn't want to you wouldn't want to be too quick to take that kind of a chance with Evander Kane. So by no means am I saying that the Edmonton Oilers should go out and acquire Evander Kane tomorrow. Absolutely not. But dismissing it out of hand the way that so many fans have is honestly something that I wouldn't be nearly so quick to do. Because the Edmonton Oilers have succeeded with these kinds of reclamation projects before. And I really do think that with the right coaching and the right growth mentality, I think that they could succeed with one again.